Hello, and welcome to Whispers of the Gods. When you think of the Olympic Games, you likely imagine a global festival of sport. Thousands of athletes from every country competing for gold, silver, and bronze medals. But the original Games, the ancient Olympics, were a very different affair. They were smaller, harsher, and in many ways, far more profound. There were no gold medals, there were no national teams, and the athletes competed completely naked. Why would anyone endure years of brutal training, travel across dangerous lands, and compete in violent, often deadly events, all for a simple crown of olive leaves? The answer was something more valuable than gold: glory. In ancient Greece, to be an Olympic champion was to touch the divine, to win a piece of immortality, and to bring unimaginable honor to yourself, your family, and your city-state, all under the watchful eye of Zeus, king of the gods. So, tonight you will become one of these athletes. We will leave the modern world behind and travel back over 2,000 years. You will experience the long and grueling transformation from a farm boy into a hardened competitor. You will make the long pilgrimage across Greece, survive the brutal month-long trial at Elis, and swear your sacred oath to the gods. You will experience the roar of the crowd, the dust of the stadium, and the thrill of victory that could make you a legend forever. Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of a sacred grove, your heart pounding like a war drum against your ribs. The air is thick with the scent of olive blossoms and burnt offerings. Around you, thousands upon thousands of voices rise and fall like ocean waves crashing against cliffs. You are not a spectator tonight. You are an athlete. And before you stretches the most hallowed ground in all of Greece. This is Olympia, and you have come here to touch immortality itself. The ancient Olympic Games were not the celebration of international unity we know today. There were no national anthems, no flags waving in synchronized pride, no bronze or silver medals for those who came close. In the world you have entered, there is only one truth that matters. Victory means everything. Defeat means you are forgotten, erased from history as though you never existed. And tonight, you will discover what it truly meant to compete when the games belonged not to nations, but to the gods. The path that brought you here began not in glory, but in dust and sweat and endless grinding work. If you were to compete in the ancient Olympics, your journey would have started years before you ever glimpsed the sacred stadium. In your city, perhaps Athens or Corinth, or one of the countless settlements scattered across the Greek world, you would have spent your youth in the gymnasium. This was not merely a place of exercise. It was a temple to human potential, where boys were transformed into warriors and athletes through discipline that would break lesser spirits. Step through the gates of the gymnasium, and your senses are immediately assaulted. The smell hits you first, a potent mixture you will never forget. Olive oil, gallons upon gallons of it, warming in the Mediterranean sun until it takes on an almost sweet, cloying thickness. Mixed with this is the sharp tang of fine sand, kicked up into clouds by grappling bodies and pounding feet. And beneath it all, the unmistakable metallic scent of sweat, the perfume of exertion that clings to every surface. This is the smell of transformation, the alchemy that turns soft flesh into hardened muscle. Here, in this world of constant motion and relentless effort, you would have learned what the Greeks called ponos. The word translates poorly into modern languages. It means work, yes, but also pain, toil, and suffering. More than that, it represents purposeful sacred suffering, the belief that only through breaking yourself down completely can you be rebuilt into something greater. Your trainer, a man whose body bears the scars of his own athletic career, drives you forward with commands that allow no hesitation. In his hand, he carries a long olive branch stripped of leaves, its purpose not decoration, but correction. When your form falters, when exhaustion makes you sloppy, the switch lands across your shoulders with a sharp crack that sends lightning through your nerves. The Greeks trained according to the tetrad, a 4-day cycle that governed your exertion with the precision of a master craftsman shaping bronze. The first day was preparation, moderate effort to ready your body for what was to come. The second day was devastation, an all-out assault on your physical limits that left you trembling on the edge of collapse. your legs barely able to support your weight, your lungs feeling as though they might burst. The third day brought recovery, but not rest. Slow, deliberate movements designed to heal without letting your muscles grow soft. The fourth day was a bridge, medium intensity that prepared you to begin the cycle again, and again, and again. Week after week, month after month, the tetrad ground away at everything you were, revealing what you might become. But training was only half the transformation. Food was the fuel that powered this relentless machine, and the question of what an athlete should eat sparked fierce debates that would make modern nutritionists smile with recognition. In the earliest days of the games, champions were built on simplicity itself. Coarse barley cakes called maza, handfuls of dried figs bursting with natural sweetness, fresh goat cheese, and bread dipped in watered wine. This was the diet of Sophrosine, the Greek ideal of balance and moderation in all things. It produced lean, wiry athletes whose bodies reflected the aesthetic perfection the culture prized above all else. But then came the revolutionaries, trainers who looked at tradition and saw limitation. Around 480 BC, a long-distance runner named Dromius of Stymphalus began following a Uos meat-heavy diet, and his string of victories sparked a transformation that swept through the athletic world like wildfire. Suddenly, champions were gorging on beef and pork, consuming quantities that ancient writers recorded with a mixture of awe and skepticism. The legendary wrestler Milo of Croton, who won the Olympics 6 times over more than 2 decades, was reported by ancient sources to have consumed 20 pounds of meat and 20 pounds of bread each day, washing it down with 18 pints of wine. Modern scholars recognize these numbers were likely exaggerated, perhaps to emphasize his legendary status, but they reflect the very real shift toward high-protein diets that swept through the athletic world. What matters is that they reflect a fundamental shift in how athletes approach their craft. To build a body like a bull, they reasoned, you must eat like a lion. To build a body like a bull, they reasoned, you must eat like a lion. Your own diet would have depended entirely on your trainer's philosophy. Some adhered to the old ways, believing that excess meat made athletes sluggish and dull-minded. Others embraced the protein revolution with religious fervor, forcing their charges to choke down plate after plate of dry, unseasoned meat, while forbidding the pleasures of pastries and rich sauces. Regardless of which camp your trainer belonged to, one rule remained universal. Eat not for pleasure, but for purpose. Your body was a weapon being forged, and food was simply another tool in its creation. And then, like the first whisper of thunder before a storm, everything changed. Heralds arrived in your city, 3 men dressed in white robes and crowned with olive wreaths, carrying bronze staffs that marked them as sacred messengers. These were the Spondophoroi, the truce bearers from Elis, and the moment they stepped into the agora, every voice fell silent. With ceremonial gravity, they proclaimed the Ekecharia, the sacred truce that would protect all who journeyed to Olympia. From this moment until the last traveler had safely returned home, all warfare must cease. To attack anyone traveling to or from the games would be to attack Zeus himself, inviting not just the anger of men, but the vengeance of the gods. For you, this proclamation meant the impossible had become possible. The roads of Greece were notorious for their dangers. Bandits lurked in mountain passes, rival city-states skirmished over borders and ancient grievances, and a lone traveler could easily vanish without anyone to mourn his passing. But now, cloaked in the invisible armor of the sacred truce, you could walk from one end of the Greek world to the other with relative safety. You were no longer just an athlete. You were a pilgrim on a sacred journey. The walk from your home city to Olympia would have been an odyssey in miniature, a test of endurance that separated the truly committed from those who merely dreamed of glory. If you came from Athens, the journey stretched nearly 200 miles across some of the most unforgiving terrain in the Mediterranean world. 2 weeks of walking, your feet blistering and hardening with each passing day, your legs burning with a deep, persistent ache that became as familiar as your own heartbeat. At first, the road is yours alone, just you and perhaps your trainer, walking in companionable silence through the familiar landscapes of home. But as you press westward, crossing the narrow isthmus at Corinth that connects Attica to the Peloponnese, something remarkable begins to happen. Other travelers appear on the road. A group of broad-shouldered men from Macedon, their skin paler than yours, eye you with the calculating gaze of predators sizing up prey. A lean runner from Argos moves past with the economical grace of someone who has learned to conserve every ounce of energy for when it truly matters. And still more come, flowing onto the road from every direction like tributaries joining a mighty river, all bound for the same sacred destination. By the time you reach the hills of Elis, you are part of a vast migration. Thousands of athletes and spectators moving together in a slow tide of humanity. The road becomes a moving festival, a preview of the spectacle to come. You hear a dozen different dialects of Greek, from the harsh Doric of the Spartans to the refined Attic of your own people. At night, when you stop to rest, you study your rivals by firelight. You watch how they move, how they carry themselves, looking for any hint of weakness or strength. And you know, with absolute certainty, that they are doing exactly the same to you. Then, finally, after days that blur together into an endless parade of dust and sun and aching muscles, you see it. The city walls of Elis rise before you, and a wave of relief crashes over you so powerful, it nearly brings you to your knees. The long road is over. Now, the true test begins. Elis is not like your home. For this one sacred month, it has been transformed into a pressure cooker where only the finest will survive. The city's gymnasium, even larger than the one you trained in back home, swarms with hundreds of athletes just like you. Men who have sacrificed everything for this moment, who have spent years molding their bodies into instruments of victory. In this crowd, you are no longer special. You are merely one of many hopefuls, each one burning with the same desperate hunger for glory. Before you are even allowed to touch a discus or step onto the practice track, you are summoned before the Hellenodikai. These judges, dressed in magnificent purple robes that mark their sacred authority, possess absolute power over your fate. They inspect you with the cold dispassion of priests examining a sacrificial animal, checking for any imperfection that might make you unworthy of the games. They record your name, your father's name, and your home city in their great register. And most importantly, they watch you train, evaluating every movement with eyes that miss nothing. Life in Elis settles into a routine that is both familiar and alien. The training continues, just as brutal as it has always been, but now it carries the weight of true desperation. Every day, you see men eliminated, a poor showing in the wrestling pit, a javelin throw that falls embarrassingly short, and suddenly, a man who has trained for years finds himself dismissed with a curt gesture from a judge. His dream dies in an instant, and he disappears from the gymnasium like smoke dissipating in wind. The crowd of hopefuls thins with each setting sun, and you survive one day at a time, clinging to your ambition with white-knuckled determination. The diet here is different too, and this change fills you with a knot of anxiety that sits heavy in your gut. For years, you have eaten the diet your trainer prescribed, whether that was the meat-heavy regimen of the new school or the balanced grains and figs of tradition. But here, the judges enforce equality through simplicity. Every athlete eats the same meals, coarse barley cakes that stick in your throat, dried figs, cheese, and nothing more. This is a test of your spirit's endurance, stripping away every advantage until all that remains is the foundation of strength you have built over years of suffering. You wonder if your power will fade on this austere diet, but your trainer's voice echoes in your memory. The foundation is built, he told you. This is now a test of will, not just of muscle. Then comes the day that will brand itself into your memory forever. All the surviving athletes are gathered in the Bouleuterion, the council house of Olympia. The air inside is cool and heavy with the scent of old incense, but your attention is immediately captured by the statue that dominates the room. This is Zeus Horkios, Zeus the keeper of oaths, and he is a vision of divine fury. Cast in bronze, he stands with thunderbolts clutched in both outstretched hands, his expression a mask of terrible judgment. This statue exists for one purpose only, to strike terror into the heart of any man who would consider breaking his vow. At the foot of the statue lies the freshly butchered body of a wild boar, its blood still warm, steam rising from the severed flesh in the cool air. The sharp metallic smell cuts through the incense, making your stomach clench. You understand immediately. This is not just a sacrifice, it is a warning. Just as this animal has been dismembered, so too will the gods destroy any man who swears a false oath on this holy ground. When your name is called, you step forward with legs that feel disconnected from your body. You place your hands on the still warm pieces of the sacrificial boar, and the sensation is jarring, visceral, a connection to the brutal consequence of failure. The words of the oath are spoken by a priest, and you repeat them, each syllable feeling like a chain binding your soul. You swear to Zeus that you have trained faithfully for 10 months. You swear that you will compete with honor, that you will not resort to bribery or trickery to secure victory. The words hang in the air between you and the god, witnessed by the king of Olympus himself. But the ceremony is not finished. Now your father and your trainer must step forward, placing their own hands on the sacrifice and swearing their own oaths. They vouch for your character, your dedication, your purity as a competitor. The responsibility is shared. If you cheat, you bring disgrace not only upon yourself, but upon everyone who has supported you. When you finally step out of the dark council house and back into the bright sunlight, the world looks the same, but you feel profoundly changed. A sacred bond has been tied around your soul, invisible but more real than any chain of bronze could ever be. The day arrives when the athletes and officials make the processional walk from Elis to Olympia, a journey of about 37 miles that takes on the character of a religious pilgrimage. You walk with measured steps, not racing, but moving with ceremonial deliberation. The Hellenodikai lead the procession in their purple robes, symbols of the authority they carry. Behind them, you and your fellow athletes march together, a display of the finest physiques in the entire Greek world. On the first day of this journey, the procession stops at a sacred spring that bubbles up from the earth. Here, a purification ritual is held. One by one, you wash your hands and face in the cool, clear water, symbolically cleansing yourself of the profane world of training before you present yourself to the gods. On the second day of the march, you come around a final bend in the road, and the valley opens up before you. Your breath catches in your throat. Olympia spreads out below, and it is not a city of men, but a sanctuary of the gods. Dominating everything is the Temple of Zeus, a structure so massive and perfectly proportioned, it seems impossible that human hands could have built it. Nearby stands the smaller but more ancient Temple of Hera. You see rows of stone treasuries built by various city-states, each trying to outdo the others in displays of wealth and piety. And in the center of it all rises a great dark mound, the altar of Zeus, built over centuries from the compacted ash of countless sacrifices. The entire grove seems to pulse with an invisible power, a presence so strong you can feel it pressing against your skin like a physical force. All the stories you heard as a child, all the training, all the sacrifice and suffering, it all collapses into this one overwhelming moment. Your trainer places a heavy hand on your shoulder. "This is what you have bled for," he says, his voice thick with a reverence you have never heard from him before. You take your first steps into the sacred heart of Olympia, the Altes, and you feel as though you are leaving the world of men behind and entering the domain of the gods. Here, upon their holy ground, your ultimate fate will be decided. The competition begins not with a fanfare, but with a procession. On the morning designated for the equestrian events, you join the massive crowd flowing toward the hippodrome, a vast open plain outside the sacred grove. The atmosphere here is different from the reverent quiet of the temples. This is a place of barely contained chaos, of shouting and betting, and the sharp smell of horses eager to run. The four-horse chariot race, the Tethripon, is the most expensive and prestigious event, the domain of kings and tyrants and the obscenely wealthy. The chariots themselves are marvels of engineering, light wooden platforms on two wheels, painted with the emblems of their owners. The starting mechanism is a wonder of ingenuity, shaped like a ship's prow facing down the track. At the sound of a trumpet, a bronze eagle rises at the point of the prow, while a dolphin falls, triggering a complex series of ropes that release the chariots in sequence. First the back markers at either side, then the ones in front, until all the teams are level and thundering down the track together. The sound is overwhelming, 40 hooves striking the earth in a percussion that you feel in your bones. The real danger comes at the far end of the track, at the tight 180-degree turn around the post. Here, skill and luck collide with devastating results. On the second lap, you see disaster unfold before your eyes. A driver cuts the turn too sharply, his chariot's wheel clips the post, and the entire vehicle explodes in a shower of splintered wood. The driver is thrown, tumbling across the track like a broken doll, and another chariot, unable to swerve in time, plows into his fallen horses. The sound of cracking wood and the high-pitched screams of injured animals cuts through even the roar of the crowd. This is a spectacle of wealth and danger, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. But it is not your world. Your glory cannot be bought, and your victory cannot be won by another. When the day comes for your own competition, you walk through the vaulted tunnel called the crypt and emerge into the stadium. The space hits you like a physical blow. It is a long rectangle of packed earth, flanked by grassy embankments that are packed with thousands upon thousands of spectators. The wall of humanity seems to press in from all sides, and there is nowhere to hide, no escape from the weight of all those eyes. This is what you have dreamed of and feared in equal measure. This is the moment that will define everything. If you are competing in the pentathlon, you face 5 distinct challenges, each testing a different aspect of your athletic ability. The discus throw comes first, a test of explosive rotational power. You watch your rivals step up one by one, their bronze discs spinning through the air before landing with heavy thuds in the dirt. When your turn comes, you block out the roaring crowd and let muscle memory take over. The countless afternoons of practice, the sting of your trainer's switch after every clumsy release, it all distills into this single perfect motion. You spin, release, and watch the disc soar. Where it lands will determine your fate. Next comes the long jump, the halma, perhaps the most technical of all field events. You are handed 2 halteres, crescent-shaped stone weights as heavy as small melons. A flute player begins a rhythmic tune designed to guide the timing of your approach. You swing the weights forward and back, building momentum, letting them pull you like a pendulum gathering force. At the perfect moment, you launch yourself forward, thrusting the weights out in front of you as you jump, then pulling them back violently in midair to propel your body even farther. You land hard in the sandpit, stumbling but staying on your feet. The judge measures your mark and you hold your breath, waiting for his verdict. The javelin throw is next, and for many athletes, this is where dreams die. The weapon itself is slender elderwood as tall as you are, with a small bronze tip for weight. The crucial element is the ankyle, a thin leather thong wrapped around the center of the shaft. You loop your fingers through the thong, and as you throw, the thong unwinds, spinning the javelin with a sharp hiss that sends it flying with perfect stable grace. Or at least, that is the theory. In practice, the javelin is a temperamental creature that demands perfect technique. A fraction of an inch in your grip, a slight hesitation in your release, and the weapon wobbles in the air before falling pathetically short. You have seen strong men reduced to despair by this event, their power useless without the precision it demands. The stadion, a single furious sprint down the length of the stadium, comes next. You place your bare feet in the parallel grooves cut into the stone starting line, the balbies, and wait for the judge's signal. When it comes, you explode forward with everything you have left. Your muscles are heavy, screaming with the fatigue of 3 field events already completed, but you drive yourself forward with pure will. The earth flies beneath your feet. The roar of the crowd becomes a sustained wall of sound, and the finish line seems both impossibly distant and suddenly right there. You cross it gasping, bent over with your hands on your knees, tasting blood and dust. If you have scored high enough in these 4 events, you advance to the final test, wrestling. This is where champions are forged or broken. In the skama, the shallow pit of sand at the center of the stadium, you face your final opponent. Perhaps he is a pure wrestler, a mountain of muscle who has been waiting for this moment. Perhaps he is another pentathlete like you, equally exhausted, equally desperate. It does not matter. All that matters is this. In front of thousands of screaming spectators, under the merciless eye of Zeus himself, you must prove that you deserve. The crown. The match is savage. Sand clings to your oil-slicked skin, turning you into a muddy creature barely recognizable as human. You grapple and strain, every muscle fiber screaming in protest. Your opponent's strength is immense, and when he gets you in a body lock and lifts you from your feet, slamming you into the ground with bone-jarring force, you see stars and taste copper. The first fall goes to him, and despair claws at your throat, but you force yourself to your feet, take your place again, and the second round begins. This time, you are smarter, using his own momentum against him, executing the hip throw your trainer drilled into you 1,000 times. When he crashes onto his back in a cloud of dust, the first fall is yours. The third and final round is a war of attrition. You are locked together for what feels like an eternity, chests heaving, muscles trembling with exhaustion. Then you see it, the opening you have been waiting for. He overcommits, reaching for your neck one last time. You duck under his arm, lock your hands behind his back, and drive forward with every last ounce of strength you possess. For one breathless moment, you are both suspended in the perfect imbalance. Then, with a great sigh of collapsing muscle, he goes down. The judge's hand grasps your shoulder and raises your arm. The match is yours. The pentathlon is yours. The roar of the crowd washes over you like a wave, and you understand that everything has changed. But the games are not finished, and on the following day you join the crowd as a spectator to witness the heavy events. These are the competitions that separate the truly fearless from everyone else. Boxing is first, and the two men who step into the scama are built differently from you. They are massive, barrel-chested giants whose faces tell the story of countless brutal matches. Thickened scar tissue over their brows, flattened noses that have been broken multiple times, cauliflower ears swollen and deformed, teeth knocked out and never replaced. They wrap their hands in leather straps called himantes, and the fight begins. It is slow, methodical, and terrible. The sound is what you remember most. The wet, percussive thud of leather on flesh, the sickening crack of a blow landing square on a cheekbone. There are no rounds, no rest periods, no time limits. The fight continues until one man is knocked unconscious or raises his finger in submission. You watch with a mixture of horror and fascination as these giants slowly, systematically break each other down under the merciless sun. Then comes the pankration, and the crowd's excitement reaches a fever pitch. This is the most brutal event of all, a terrifying combination of boxing and wrestling where only biting and eye gouging are forbidden. The two finalists who enter the stadium look less like men and more like creatures from myth. The fight begins with a flurry of kicks and punches, but it quickly goes to the ground, and it is there that the true savagery of the sport is revealed. It is a desperate, writhing struggle of chokeholds, joint locks, and pure savage strength. You watch as one man traps his opponent's arm, twisting it at an unnatural angle until the bone is on the verge of snapping. The crowd roars its approval as the trapped man's finger shoots up in submission. These are different kinds of champions, forged in a fire even more intense than the one that created you. As you watch them, battered and bleeding, but arms raised in triumph, you feel a profound respect for the different path they have chosen. You are a hero of Olympia, but they are something else entirely. They are warriors who have stared into the abyss of human violence and emerged victorious. Women had no place in these competitions, or so the men of Greece insisted, with laws backed by the threat of death. Any married woman caught attending the Olympic Games would be thrown from the cliffs of Mount Typeum to her doom. The sanctuary of Zeus was a male domain, and the presence of women during the sacred festival was considered a defilement that would anger the gods themselves. And yet, despite these brutal restrictions, some women found ways to claim their own piece of Olympic glory. Cyniska of Sparta, a princess born around 440 BC, discovered the loophole that would make her immortal. Women could not compete as athletes, could not even watch the events, but they could own and train horses for the chariot races. The victories in these events went to the owners, not the riders, who were usually slaves. In 396 BC, when Cyniska was approximately 40 years old, her team won the prestigious four-horse chariot race. the shock rippled through the Greek world. A woman had won an Olympic event. 4 years later, she did it again. Cyniska commissioned bronze statues of herself, her chariot, her horses, and her charioteer, placing them in a prominent location at the Temple of Zeus. The inscription on her monument was defiant and proud. She declared herself the only woman in all of Greece to have won the Olympic crown, and that crown would be remembered for all time. Her victories opened a door that had been locked since the games began. Other women followed, including Eurylionis, Belistiche, and dozens more, though none achieved the same lasting fame as the Spartan princess who dared to be first. There was also Kallipoeira, sometimes called Pherenike, whose story speaks to a different kind of courage. She was the daughter of the legendary boxer Diagoras of Rhodes, whose family produced multiple Olympic champions. When her husband died suddenly, she took over as trainer for her son, Paisirodos, in boxing. But women could not serve as trainers, so based on accounts from ancient writers like Pausanias, she disguised herself as a man, binding her appearance to pass for male and affecting masculine mannerisms. She stood in the trainer's enclosure, her identity concealed, watching her son fight. When he won, overcome with pride and relief, she leaped over the enclosure barrier to embrace him. In her enthusiasm, her robes came loose and her identity was revealed. The judges faced an impossible decision. The law demanded her execution, but she was the daughter, sister, and mother of Olympic champions. How could they throw such a woman from the cliffs? They chose mercy, sparing her life in honor of her family's glory. But to prevent any future woman from attempting the same deception, they passed a new law. From that day forward, all trainers, like the athletes themselves, had to enter the stadium completely naked. For most women, the only outlet for athletic competition was the Heraian Games, held at Olympia in honor of the goddess Hera. These games were for unmarried young women, parthenoi, who would run in short tunics that left their right shoulder and breast bare, their hair unbound and flowing free. The race they ran was about 1/6 shorter than the men's stadion, but the prize was still an honor worth striving for. A wreath cut from a sacred olive tree, a share of a sacrificed heifer, and the right to set up a painted portrait in the temple of Hera. It was not the same glory that the male champions received, but it was glory nonetheless, proof that the human drive to test oneself against others recognizes no boundaries. Victory at the ancient Olympics meant far more than a moment of triumph. It meant transformation. On the final day of the games, you stand with the other champions before the massive temple of Zeus. The Hellenodikai wait in their purple robes, and beside them on a table of ivory and gold rest the prizes. Not gold or silver or bronze, but simple wreaths freshly cut from the branches of the wild olive tree that grows behind the temple. A herald's voice, amplified by a bronze horn, booms across the sanctuary. He calls out the name of each champion, their father's name, and their city. When he calls your name, the roar from the thousands of spectators confirms the truth. You have become something more than mortal. A judge places the wreath gently upon your head. It is almost weightless, just a circle of twigs and leaves, yet it feels heavier than any stone you ever lifted. It carries the weight of history, of honor, of immortality itself. You are given a palm branch to hold, another ancient symbol of victory. As you turn back to the crowd, they erupt, showering you with so many flowers and ribbons that you are momentarily blinded by the storm of color. The journey home is nothing like the arduous pilgrimage that brought you to Olympia. You are no longer an anonymous hopeful, you are a victor, and in every town you pass through, the news of your triumph has preceded you. You are greeted with cheers, offered the best food and wine, treated not as a traveler, but as a returning king. Your father walks beside you, his back straighter than you have ever seen it, pride radiating from him like heat from a forge. As you approach the walls of your home city, you see that the fields outside are empty. The entire population has poured out to greet you. They do not lead you through the main gate meant for common men. Instead, they guide you to a section of wall where stones have been pulled down, creating a fresh breach. You are told that the city is making a statement to its enemies. With sons like you to defend it, it has no need for stone fortifications. You are the living wall, the shield that protects your people. You are placed in a magnificent 4-horse chariot, the olive wreath from Olympia on your head. The chariot rolls slowly through the breach and into the city where the streets are so packed with cheering people, it feels as though you are moving through a living sea. They shower you with flowers and ribbons, their faces alight with a joy that is both for you and for the glory you have brought to them. At the heart of the city, a magistrate proclaims the honors your people bestow upon you. A cash prize of 500 drachmas, the privilege of front row seats at the theater for the rest of your life, and the greatest honor of all citises, the right to take your meals for free every day in the Prytaneon, alongside the most important officials and heroes of the state. Your family announces that the prize money will be used to commission a master sculptor to create a bronze statue of you. It will be placed in the gymnasium where young boys train, a permanent monument to your achievement. For centuries to come, they will train in its shadow. They will hear your name and be inspired to pursue their own glory. In this way, your victory and your family's name will never die. This is Kleos, undying glory, the ultimate achievement for which every Greek athlete strived. The ancient Olympic Games would continue for nearly 1,200 years, an almost unimaginable span of time. They continued even as Greece was conquered by Rome, even as the world changed beyond recognition. But eventually, a new religion swept across the empire, and the old ways were seen as pagan relics of a dying world. In 393 AD, the Christian Roman Emperor Theodosius abolished the games, extinguishing a sacred flame that had burned for more than a millennium. After the final games, the sanctuary of Olympia began a long descent into ruin. Its treasures were plundered, its temples burned. Two massive earthquakes in the 6th century shattered the colossal stone columns and toppled the statues of the gods. Then, the nearby rivers changed their course and flooded the valley, burying the entire sanctuary under more than 20 feet of sand and silt. Olympia, the sacred heart of the Greek world, vanished from the face of the earth. For 1,000 years it was a lost world, its location a mystery, its glory preserved only in fragile ancient texts. The rediscovery began in the 18th century, but the great work started in 1875 when German archaeologists began systematic excavation. Slowly, miraculously, the lost world emerged from the earth. They uncovered the foundations of the great temple of Zeus, the stone starting line of the original stadium, and the very pedestals where the statues of champions once stood. This rediscovery of the physical remains, combined with the timeless ideals preserved in Greek texts, captured the imagination of a French educator named Baron Pierre de Coubertin. He believed that the modern world could be enriched by reviving the spirit of the ancient games, the pursuit of excellence, the honorable competition, and the gathering of the world's youth in peace. His tireless efforts culminated in 1896 in the city of Athens, with the birth of the first modern Olympic Games. The connection between ancient and modern runs deeper than most realize. Stand today in the stadium at Olympia, your feet on the same earth where champions stood more than 2,000 years ago, and you can feel the weight of that continuity. The track is still there, 600 feet long, the exact distance of the ancient stadion. The stone starting blocks with their parallel grooves still wait, worn smooth by the bare feet of countless athletes who placed their toes in those marks and exploded forward at the judge's signal. Walk through the vaulted tunnel, the crypt, and emerge into the space where 40,000 voices once roared their approval or disappointment. The embankments are still there, grass-covered and peaceful now, but your imagination can populate them with the masses who came from every corner of the Greek world. You can almost hear the echo of the trumpet signaling the start of a race, the thud of the discus landing in the dirt, the grunt of wrestlers locked in desperate combat. At the nearby site of ancient Elis, you can still see the remains of the gymnasium where athletes endured their final brutal month of preparation. The columns lie where they fell, victims of earthquakes and time, but the footprint of the building remains clear. This was where dreams were crushed and champions were confirmed. This was where the judges watched with their calculating eyes, deciding who was worthy to proceed to the sacred games and who would be sent home to face the silence of defeat. The ruins speak of a world that was simultaneously familiar and alien, These were people who, like us, pushed their bodies to the absolute limit in pursuit of glory. They understood the value of disciplined training, the importance of diet and rest, the psychological edge that confidence provides. They knew about the crushing pressure of competition, the way time seems to slow down in moments of peak performance, the strange mixture of euphoria and exhaustion that follows victory. In these fundamental ways, they were no different from the athletes who compete today in stadiums around the world, but they were also products of a culture we can barely comprehend. They competed not for their nations, but for their families and their cities. They sought not financial reward, but something they considered far more valuable, a form of immortality achieved through having their names remembered and their deeds celebrated in song. They believed that athletic excellence was a gift from the gods, and that to waste such a gift was a form of sacrilege. They accepted a level of violence in their sports that would horrify modern spectators, watching men deliberately break each other's bones and choke each other unconscious for the entertainment of the crowd. The olive wreath that crowned a victor's head had no monetary value whatsoever, yet it was worth more than gold to the man who received it. This simple crown opened doors that would otherwise remain forever locked. It transformed a common man into a hero whose opinion carried weight in political assemblies. It gave him the right to be fed at public expense for the rest of his life, a privilege that, in lean times, could mean the difference between comfort and hunger. It made him eligible for the most prestigious marriages, alliances that could elevate an entire family's status for generations. Some victors became military leaders, their Olympic glory lending them an aura of invincibility that inspired soldiers to follow them into the most desperate battles. The wrestler Milo of Croton, winner of 6 Olympic titles and 5 Pythian titles, led his city's army against the neighboring city of Sybaris. Legend says he entered battle dressed as Heracles, complete with lion skin and club, and his mere presence was enough to strike fear into enemy hearts. Whether this tale is literal truth or myth amplified by time, it speaks to the very real power that Olympic victory could confer. Others became politicians and statesmen, their fame giving them a platform from which to influence policy and shape the course of history. Still others chose to remain in the world of athletics, becoming trainers who passed their hard-won knowledge to the next generation. The greatest ambition of all was to found an athletic dynasty, to see your own sons crowned as victors, solidifying your family's heroic status for generations. When the boxer Diagoras of Rhodes lived to see all 3 of his sons win Olympic titles, his joy was said to be so complete that someone in the crowd shouted to him that he should die right then, for he had achieved everything a mortal man could achieve, and nothing that followed could possibly match that moment of perfect happiness. In the most extreme cases, the greatest champions were elevated even beyond heroic status. After their deaths, cults formed around their memory, and people believed their statues possessed healing powers. The pankration Theogenes of Thasos, who won more than 1,400 victories in various competitions during his lifetime, was worshipped as a demigod. When he died, a rival who had always envied him went to his statue every night and whipped it in symbolic revenge. One night, the statue fell and crushed the man to death. The statue was then put on trial for murder, found guilty, and thrown into the sea because the people believed it had killed a man. Later, when a famine struck the island, the oracle declared that the gods were angry because the statue had been destroyed. Fishermen recovered it from the sea, it was reinstalled with full honors, and Theogenes was worshipped with sacrifices for centuries afterward. This is how completely the line between athletic excellence and divinity could blur in the ancient world. The games themselves were about far more than individual glory. They were the closest thing the fractured Greek world had to a unifying force. In a landscape of hundreds of independent city-states that were constantly at war with each other, the Olympic Games provided a brief window of peace when all Greeks could gather as one people, bound by a common language, common gods, and common ideals. The sacred truce, the ekecheria, was not always perfectly observed. There are records of cities being fined for breaking the peace. But the ideal was powerful, and for the most part, it held. For those few weeks every 4 years, the Greek world could set aside its grievances and celebrate what united it rather than what divided it. The sanctuary at Olympia became a de facto neutral territory where diplomats could meet to negotiate treaties, where philosophers could debate ideas, where artists could display their works, and where merchants could conduct business with people from every corner of the Mediterranean world. The historian Herodotus is said to have given public readings of his histories at Olympia, introducing his groundbreaking work to an audience that included some of the most influential people in Greece. The philosopher Plato attended the games and used the gathering as an opportunity to discuss his ideas with anyone who would listen. The sanctuary was not just an athletic venue, it was the beating heart of Greek civilization, the place where all the threads of their culture came together. The sheer scale of the gathering is difficult to comprehend. 40,000 people or more would converge on a sanctuary that had no permanent housing infrastructure. A vast temporary city of tents and makeshift shelters would spring up, sprawling across the surrounding hills and valleys. Conditions were crowded, uncomfortable, and often unsanitary. The heat in August could be brutal. The dust was everywhere, and basic necessities like clean water were in short supply. Flies swarmed over the animal sacrifices. Disease could spread quickly through the packed crowds, and pickpockets and con artists worked the masses with impunity. Yet, people came anyway, traveling for weeks across dangerous roads, spending money they could ill afford, enduring conditions that would make modern festival-goers blanch, all for the privilege of witnessing these sacred games. The crowd included not just spectators, but delegations from cities bringing magnificent offerings to the gods, merchants hoping to make profitable deals, artists seeking commissions, prostitutes looking for wealthy clients, food vendors selling everything from roasted meats to honey cakes, and soothsayers offering to predict the future for a few coins. It was chaos and order, sacred and profane, sublime and ridiculous, all mixed together. The experience of being in that crowd must have been overwhelming. The roar when a popular champion won would have been audible for miles. The collective gasp when a chariot crashed and splintered would have rippled through 40,000 throats simultaneously. The smell of tens of thousands of unwashed bodies, mixed with the smoke of cooking fires and the metallic tang of sacrificial blood, would have created an olfactory experience impossible to replicate in the modern world. And through it all, the sense that you were participating in something ancient and holy, something that connected you to every Greek who had come before and would come after, would have elevated even the most mundane moments into something approaching the transcendent. The athletic events themselves evolved over the centuries. The first Olympics in 1756 BC featured only a single foot race. Over time, new events were added. The dialos, a 2-lap race, was introduced in 724 BC. The long-distance race, the dolichos, was added in 720 BC. Wrestling came in 708 BC, and with it, the pentathlon. Boxing arrived in 688 BC, the 4-horse chariot race in 680 BC, and the savage pankration in 648 BC. Each edition reflected the Greeks' desire to test every aspect of human physical capability, to find out what mortals could achieve when pushed to their absolute limits. The program eventually settled into a 5-day festival. The first day was devoted to religious ceremonies, sacrifices, and the taking of oaths. The second day featured the chariot races and the pentathlon. The third day was the most sacred, with the great sacrifice of 100 oxen to Zeus, followed by the foot races. The fourth day was devoted to wrestling, boxing, and pankration, and the fifth day was for the victory ceremonies and celebrations. This structure remained essentially unchanged for centuries, a ritual so deeply embedded in Greek culture that it seemed eternal. But nothing is truly eternal. When the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as its official religion, the old gods became embarrassments, and the festivals held in their honor became targets for elimination. The Olympic Games, with their nakedness, their pagan sacrifices, and their celebration of physical rather than spiritual excellence, were particularly offensive to Christian sensibilities. The Emperor Theodosius's decree shutting them down in 393 AD was the death knell for a tradition that had survived wars, invasions, political upheavals, and nearly 1,200 years of continuous history. What was lost when the games ended cannot be fully calculated, an entire way of understanding the human body and its capabilities vanished. The sophisticated training, methods developed over centuries were forgotten. The architectural innovations of the stadiums and hippodromes crumbled into ruin. The social institution that had allowed the fractured Greek world to come together peacefully was gone, and nothing replaced it. For 1,000 years, Western civilization would not see athletic competition on anything approaching the same scale or with the same cultural significance. But the idea never completely died. The texts survived, copied by monks who saw value in preserving ancient knowledge even when they found the content troubling. The ruins remained, buried but not destroyed, waiting to tell their story to anyone who cared to listen. And when they were finally excavated in the 19th century, they sparked an imagination that led directly to the revival of the games in modern form. The modern Olympics are different in almost every particular from their ancient predecessor. They involve women as well as men. They feature team sports as well as individual competitions. They award 3 levels of medals rather than a single olive wreath. They move from city to city rather than being held in a single sacred location. They attempt to promote international peace and understanding rather than celebrating a single culture. But the fundamental idea remains the same. The belief that athletic competition can bring out the best in human beings, that pushing ourselves to our physical limits is worthy of celebration, and that the pursuit of excellence is a noble goal in itself. These ideals connect the ancient athlete standing in the stadium at Olympia to the modern athlete standing on a podium in Tokyo or Paris or Los Angeles. If you could step back in time and compete in those ancient games, you would find a world that challenges every assumption you hold about sports and competition. You would discover that glory came not with financial reward, but with a crown of leaves and the promise that your name would be remembered. You would learn that the pain of training was not an unfortunate side effect, but a sacred duty, a necessary suffering that transformed common flesh into something approaching the divine. You would understand that defeat was not just disappointment, but a kind of death, an erasure so complete that defeated athletes would sneak home by back roads, hoping no one would recognize them. But you would also discover something profound about the human spirit. You would see that the drive to test ourselves, to find out what we are truly capable of, is not a modern invention. It is ancient, primal, perhaps even fundamental to what it means to be human. The Greeks understood this in a way that we are only beginning to rediscover. They built a civilization that celebrated physical excellence not as a distraction from more important pursuits, but as one of the highest achievements a human being could reach. The athletes who walked through the vaulted tunnel and into the roaring stadium were not professional entertainers. They were not chasing sponsorship deals or setting themselves up for lucrative careers. They were seeking something far more valuable and far more elusive. They were reaching for a piece of immortality, for the chance to have their names spoken with reverence long after their bodies had returned to dust. Some succeeded, and their names echo through history. Milo of Croton, Leonidas of Rhodes, Theogenes of Thasos, Diagoras and his sons. These men became more than athletes. They became legends, proof that mortal humans could, through sheer will and endless suffering, achieve something that approached the divine. And what of those who failed? What of the thousands upon thousands of athletes whose names were never recorded, who trained for years and traveled across dangerous lands only to be eliminated in the qualifying rounds or defeated in the finals? They vanished into obscurity, their dreams unfulfilled, their sacrifices unrewarded. The ancient world had no sympathy for them, no participation trophies or consolation prizes. They were forgotten as though they had never existed, their failure a cautionary tale to inspire the next generation to train harder, to want victory more desperately, to be willing to sacrifice anything and everything for the chance at glory. This harsh reality is perhaps what makes the ancient games so fascinating and so alien to modern sensibilities. We live in a world that tries to find value in participation itself, that celebrates personal bests and participation medals and the journey rather than just the destination. The ancient Greeks would have found this attitude baffling, even offensive. For them, there was only one thing worth celebrating: victory. Everything else was just varying degrees of failure. Yet, despite this harshness, or perhaps because of it, the ancient Olympics represented something pure and powerful. They were a distillation of human ambition and human excellence down to its most essential form. Strip away the money, the nationalism, the commercialism, the endless layers of modern complexity, and what remains is the same thing that drove that first champion in 776 BC. The desire to be the best, to prove yourself against the finest competitors in the world, and to have your achievement recognized and remembered. The stadium at Olympia is quiet now, empty except for the occasional tourist walking its length and imagining the ghosts of ancient champions. The roar of 40,000 voices has faded into silence. The temples are ruins, the statues toppled, the treasuries plundered. But the spirit of those games, the fundamental human drive they represented, has never truly died. It was merely sleeping, waiting for the right moment to be awakened and transformed into something new, yet connected to its ancient roots. So, tonight, as you stand at the edge of that imaginary sacred grove, your heart pounding with anticipation and fear, remember this. You are not just an athlete competing in a sporting event. You are part of a tradition that stretches back more than 2,700 years. You are connected to every champion who has ever pushed themselves beyond their limits, who has ever transformed pain into purpose, who has ever reached for something greater than themselves. The olive wreath is long gone, replaced by gold medals and endorsement deals. The naked competitions and bloody combat sports have given way to more civilized contests. But the essential truth remains unchanged. To compete is to test yourself against the very limits of human capability. To win is to achieve something that will outlive your physical body. And to stand upon the victor's podium, whether it is made of ancient stone or modern metal, is to touch, for one brief shining moment, the immortality that all mortals secretly crave. The ancient games are gone, but their spirit endures, waiting in the starting blocks of every track, in the chalked hands of every gymnast, in the focused eyes of every athlete who has ever dared to dream of glory. This was the world of the ancient Olympics, a world of olive wreaths and sacred oaths, of brutal training and even more brutal competition, of forgotten losers and immortal champions. It was a world where pain was sacred, where suffering was purposeful, and where a simple crown of leaves could transform a farmer's son into a legend whose name would echo through the centuries. It is gone now, buried under the dust of millennia, but it lives on in every athlete who has ever pushed themselves to their absolute limit in pursuit of something greater than themselves. The games have changed, but the dream remains the same, and that dream, as ancient as civilization itself, will never truly die.